This is Kwame McDonald with SPNN Sports Rap. And as you know, that's spelled R-A-P. We're being brought to you by Big Daddy's Barbecue, old-fashioned Kentucky barbecue, right here in the historic St. Paul Union Depot, and also Galaxy Coffee Shop on Rice and Cook, run by students at Arlington High School. We have a great guest with us this morning, and so we won't waste any of his precious time. We're going to go right into it. Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm good. My time's no more precious than anybody else's.
Well, that's what they all say.
But I'm pleased to be here with you.
Yeah. Senator Paul Wellstone, former wrestler. Paul, let's go all the way back to when you first remember breathing this good American air, and tell us about how you got where you are today.
Whoa.
Huh?
Into wrestling, or
start with your childhood.
My childhood. Whoa. Well, my father, Leon, both my parents have passed away now, but my father, Leon, was a Jewish immigrant who fled persecution from Russia. He was born in the Ukraine, in Odessa, and then in Tsarist Russia, his family had to keep moving to stay ahead of what were called the pogroms, where the troops would come in and destroy his dad's small business. His dad owned a clothing store. And my father fled when he was 17 in 1914, and he never was able to go back to Russia, never saw his family again. My mother's family were from the Ukraine, and her name was Minsha Danishevsky, and she was a cafeteria worker. If my mother really liked you, the compliment she would pay you would be to say you were a good worker. Very humble background, a really wonderful person. So these were my parents, and I was born in Washington, D.C., in GW Hospital, and we moved. I lived in a place called Falls Church in Arlington, Virginia, which then was very much a working class area. There were like apartments above stores, and finally, when my dad was 55, I think, my father was 47 when I was born. They were able to afford a home, and they bought their first home, which is a little teeny place, and that's where I grew up. They were, one thing I would say about my parents is that my father, here's a sports connection, they were both kind of an embarrassment to me when I was younger, because they were old generation, and they were also older when I was born, so they didn't fit in with my friends' friends. They weren't cool. And my father stuck out like a sore thumb, and I remember in particular one time when I was playing football, I was 10, I asked him to come, and he never come. He had never seen me play, and he came. And on this day, I was the honest-to-God hero. I scored 3 touchdowns. I think I ran for 80, 75, 65 yards. And my father, you know, he watched it, and then he went back home, and then I came back to our house, and he was in his little office. He was a writer. My dad always wanted to be a playwright, and I walked in, and I said, "What did you think?" And he said, "It wasn't football." And I said, "It was football." He said, "It wasn't football." It turned out I realized he's talking about soccer.
Right.
He thought it was soccer, which is what he grew up with. And my mother was, and I say this because whenever I'm in schools, I always go to visit with the food service workers. I'm in a school about every 2 weeks because I so appreciate their work. Because my mom, kids used to make, in the junior high school she worked, they used to make fun of the women, mainly women who worked in the cafeteria. They kind of looked down on them then. And, you know, my mother was trying to put food on the table for us. We didn't have a lot of money. And so I have now really, when I visit schools, I always am kind of to honor my mother, much less food service workers. I always try and see them. And then later on, when I got to be high school age, I realized what a treasure my father was. And every night, I just finished writing a chapter of a book I'm working on called Hot Tea and Sponge Cake at 10 p.m. That's the title of the chapter. We would meet at 10 o'clock Sunday night through Thursday night, not on the weekends. And my mother would make some sponge cake, and we'd have hot tea, and my father for half an hour would talk about the world, and I would just listen. He was my teacher. He spoke 10 languages fluently. He spoke 10 languages fluently. He was the most profound, Kwame, probably the best person that I have ever known in my life.
Isn't that
So I miss both of them.
Sure.